All right, welcome back to the Elias Macko Show. Now, this is something, if you're a Facebook user, you have seen these types of scam ads before that usually invoke a celebrity, right? And we've seen it. English Canadian celebrities. We've seen the celebrities being targeted with this. We've seen U.S. celebrities, right? I think about the people at the Shark Tank, right? They're so ripe for this type of scam. Someone will take a member of Shark Tank and say, look at this product. It's used by so-and-so, and they'll try and sell fake stuff on it. Or sometimes they'll try and nab you with a fake news story, a disparaging story about a celebrity, all in the hopes of getting clicks. Now, Quebec celebrities are not immune to this. And now they're fighting back. There's a request for a class action lawsuit that's been filed against Meta, the owner of Facebook, by Quebec personality Marie-Claude Barrette. It concerns false news that targets Quebec personalities, like I had mentioned off the top, one of the schemes that used. The alleged fraudsters purchasing advertising space on Meta's platforms like Facebook and Instagram. Let's go now to Elodie Meyer, Cybersecurity lawyer, with her take on this lawsuit. Elodie, welcome back to the program.
Hi, Elias. Thank you for having me.
So give me the crux of this lawsuit. If Marie-Claude Barrette and whoever else is going to be involved in this lawsuit, if they're going to be successful against Meta, what do they need to prove?
So there's multiple things that need to be proven for a class action lawsuit. Firstly being the damages, and then that they result from a fault that is the same for everyone. And that's the tricky part about class action suits, is that if there's a context that is too different from one person to the next, then it can't actually go through a class action suit, and every person's going to have to go in front of a judge and kind of make their case individually. Now, the second issue is to be sure to have a class, right? The class of the class action suit would be having enough people that have, with the same type of demands that come from the same type of issue again, and that would be certified as a class. And then again, if we consider that some people, were, the damages were very small or minimal to them, and then other people lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, then it's going to be hard to certify a class including all of these people in the same one, right?
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's going to be probably the biggest issue on this specific question here. And then it's the whole part of, some members of the class, or some people that have been victim of these frauds or schemes, are the celebrities or the public figures themselves, where, their name and likeness has been used for these frauds against their will or even their knowing. And then there's the victims, right? The people who fall to these schemes. And these can be certified under the same class either. So it's a very complex issue with different people who are being victims, but also different entities who have responsibility in there.
So I would imagine there's precedent here because, I've seen this story before in the rest of Canada. I certainly have seen it south of the border in the U.S. involving celebrities. Is there any precedent, any prior legal cases that touch on the elements here in this Quebec case?
So there are precedents that will touch on certain elements. Finding the responsibility of the platform in itself for the advertising, for example, that hasn't been done yet. And that part is trickier because anyone can post advertising. Yes, Facebook or Meta has guidelines as to what they can and cannot accept in terms of content, in terms of who's putting out the advertising. But when there's a person that has, that's ill-intended on the other side, and that they're trying to hide their intentions or hide who they really are, there's just so much that a platform like Meta can actually do, right? And so they have a responsibility, to monitor to a certain extent. But if they themselves are being fooled by the advertisement, it's hard to find their responsibility in there.
Okay, but let me just ask you this, right? Because here we here in traditional media land, whatever you want to call us, a radio station or a TV station or newspapers or websites for those newspapers, right? We all have a responsibility. And we all have to vet the stuff that not just the stuff that I say during our content, but during those commercial breaks, we have a responsibility. And I find it shocking that sort of Meta can say, well, there's just too many ads, so we can't do it. Like, that to me sounds outrageous. Am I off base here?
No, you're absolutely right. And they do have the same responsibility. I mean, there's when we're talking about a news station, obviously there's additional components of responsibility that come into play because we consider that, people should be able to rely on what comes from, news stations, whether it be radio, TV, or the newspaper. Mm-hmm. But an example that I can give, actually, a comparison that is made often between someone posting something on social media and in the newspaper, for example, is anyone could take out an ad in a newspaper. And yes, there is a certain level of vetting that's being done. We're going to check who's this person and what's the content that they're trying to put up. But if it seems legitimate, then there's a very good chance that that content will be published. And if someone then, calls the number that's in this newspaper ad and is victim of a fraud scheme after that, is the newspaper really responsible? Uh-huh. And that's kind of what Facebook's arguing here. They're saying it's not because we're a new tech media that our responsibility or that our obligations would be different or more important than the ones of traditional media. But I totally agree with you. The responsibility that traditional media has also applies to social media and the way that they monitor the content on their website.
And this is the thing, right? Because if you have a Quebec celebrity, and I mentioned the one off the top, Marie-Claude Barrette, involved in this lawsuit, and her face is showing up on Facebook with cannabis gummies. I'm sorry, that would take me half of us. If I worked at Facebook and I had to vet this stuff, it would take me half of a second to realize, no, there's something wrong here, right? And I guess with is that what you're trying to prove? If you're taking Facebook to court, you're trying to prove maybe, I don't know, like a willful blindness if they allow this stuff online.
Absolutely. And in that case, I agree with you. There are certain things that can sometimes seem obvious. And I mean, there's a level of responsibility that these platforms need to have in vetting these ads. Some can, unfortunately pass between, pass between the cracks. Yeah. But we've seen a lot of those ads. I mean, I've seen them on Facebook. They look real. They look legitimate. If you have a picture of someone like Elon Musk telling you, I invested in crypto and I made a ton of money doing it, there's, little chance you can doubt the veracity of it, but you also know that Elon Musk does dabble in crypto, has fun, talking about Dogecoin on his Twitter and whatnot. And so you could think, oh, well, maybe this is legitimate. Uh-huh. And that's kind of part of how they convince the people. They really have these websites, very elaborate websites with, what they say are reviews of people who've used their services, for example, and are very satisfied with it. But they bring a lot of content that is obviously falsified, but that looks real enough that most people will just, oh, okay, it's fine, and we accept. And you touched on a good point earlier. The volume of ads being posted is probably part of the issue. There's so much that they are having a hard time keeping track, and that is absolutely not an excuse. But that might be why more of it is falling between the cracks than we would like.
Having looked at their financial statements and their quarterly reports, they have enough money to actually do a proper job, right? So this is where their defense falls flat with me. Elodie, listen, we got to leave it there. Wonderful discussion.
Well, thank you, Elias.
Elodie Meyer is a cybersecurity lawyer.